Historians, welcome back. Based on our earlier studies this year, you have learned that Africa is the second largest continent in the world. Most of the continent is a series of plateaus, which are high, flat, or gently rolling areas of land. Although the northwestern and eastern edges of the continent are rimmed with mountains, and the interior is desert, savannas, and rainforests. The Sahara, north of the northern savanna, is the larger of the two deserts in Africa. The other African desert, the Kalahari, is located in southern Africa. The weather in the desert is very hot during the day and cool at night, occasionally below freezing. What may come as no surprise, there is little rainfall. However, when it does rain, desert scrub, a form of short vegetation, grows. Africa is watered by a number of rivers. The major ones are the Nile, Congo, Niger, and Zambezi. The Nile and the Amazon, which is located in South America, are the two longest rivers in the world. What many find interesting is that the Nile River is one of only two rivers in the world that flows north. It has two sources, the White Nile, which begins in Lake Victoria, and the Blue Nile, which begins at Lake Tana in Ethiopia. The two join at Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, and flow north. North of the capital, Cairo, the Nile opens into a triangularly shaped delta that extends into the Mediterranean Sea and is 115 miles wide at its widest point. The Nile Delta, like many others, is formed from sand and silt deposited at the river's mouth. As the Nile flows across its broad deltic plain, it branches into a number of tributaries. From overhead, it looks like a tree trunk with leafless branches. Over the course of the school year, you learned about what makes up civilizations. Civilizations have groups of people who speak the same language, have the same laws, and believe the same things. People in many civilizations live near one another, often in towns and perhaps cities, and have the same way of living. Many civilizations have a form of writing, but not all. Throughout history, many civilizations formed and collapsed over time. But unlike many civilizations, the ancient Egyptian civilization was much more stable, enabling it to last for more than 3,000 years. Today you'll be learning about the Nile River, which is located in Egypt, and why it was so important to the ancient Egyptians. In a moment, a video clip will introduce Egypt, its characteristics as an enterprising civilization, and the important role the Nile River played in the growth of a civilization in ancient Egypt. Close your eyes and make sure you are buckled in. 3, 2, 1. Let's go back to Egypt.
The time compass. Ancient Egypt, Part 1. When we mention Egypt, three images come to mind: the pyramids, the desert, and that long and impressive river called the Nile. Sound familiar? But let us start by talking about that vast sea of sand known as the Sahara Desert. This place in the north of Africa is not an appealing place to live. However, thousands of years ago, there were abundant rains in the heart of Africa. Little by little, a flow of water was created, and gradually it started to grow. These waters became one of the largest rivers in the world, the Nile. Many people have settled near this river, but living by the Nile has its ups and downs. In the wet season, the Nile grows so much that all lands around it are flooded. But when the water retreats, the land is ideal for farming, since the riverbed has fertilized the surrounding soil. Thousands of years ago, people that had been nomads started building their homes around the Nile. This is how ancient Egypt was born. The Egyptians learned how to grow crops on rich and fertile land. The food was plentiful. This meant that instead of traveling in search of food, the Egyptian people could stay in one place, farming all the food they needed.
You had to search for food all the time, Mommy?
Yes, but not anymore, honey. The Egyptians were very clever in using the flooding of the Nile to their benefit. They invented an irrigation system which let them grow even more crops. Jobs such as surveyor were invented. Like modern day engineers, surveyors measured lands and planned how to build the irrigation canals and many other things. The surveyors started to use mathematical calculations to help them plan. Later, this understanding of math would help the Egyptians build great works. The Nile brought the Egyptians another amazing benefit: trade. The crops, food, and other goods the Egyptians produced were put on boats and sold up and down the Nile. Soon, the river became a large highway where goods and peoples traveled, trading with each other, which made the Egyptians quite wealthy. With the abundance of wealth, the plentiful food, and the mobility to trade with other peoples, the great Egyptian civilization started to grow, all thanks to the River Nile.